Hi everyone, it's Dina, and I'm back today with another casual beading bracelet tutorial where I will be using items from the Gemstone Orphanage special Valentine's Day Dream Extravaganza that happened earlier in the month of February. I'll be using some of the items from the dress-up bag to make a bracelet that's going to be about 7 inches with the option of having an extender chain on it. So the supplies that you're going to need for this are going to be from the dress-up bag. First one is the cup chain, which is a 2.5 by 2 millimeter cup chain, and the stone size that's in here should be around a PP14. So if you have a cup chain that's similar to that, or you can even use a larger size cup chain, it should work just as similarly. Same concept at least. Your counts just may be a little bit different as far as when you're using your seed beads. So we'll need to have 2 strands cut of about 5 7/8 of an inch, which is, I'm hoping if I did this right, about 15 centimeters or about 148 millimeters worth. But you'll need to cut off 2 of those. If you don't have a measuring tape close by and you want to count the stones, I counted out 57 stones of each. Now of course I just cut out one, cut that, and then use that as a gauge to cut out the other one so I didn't have to count it twice. But you'll need 2 of those. You're going to need 4 of your cord ends that came in the kit, and these are 8 by 3 millimeter with an inner diameter of 2 millimeter, and as you can see they fit perfectly around the ends of the cup chain itself. You're going to need 1 of your gold heart beads. Now we're just going to make a charm with this, so this is kind of optional. You don't have to have this one if you don't want to, if you don't like charms on your bracelets and things like that. So we're going to make a charm with this guy. And then the last thing out of the dress-up bag is that you're going to need your lobster heart clasp. Any type of clasp will do. I'm just using this one because I like the shape of the heart and everything, and it kind of goes along with the theme. So the other supplies that you're going to need some sort of craft wire. I'm using the 22 gauge SoftFlex craft wire. I'm going to use the gold color just because it kind of goes along with the beads and everything. You can also use 20 gauge if you wanted to, but we're going to make some jump rings, and then we're also going to make the charm. We'll use the wire to make the charm with it. Now if you don't want to make your own jump rings, which I'll show you how to do that, but if you don't want to make your own ones and you already have 3 millimeter jump rings on hand, perfectly fine, you can use those. You're also going to need a scrap piece of wire if you follow along with me in making the jump rings, so you'll need an extra scrap piece of wire. I would suggest at least a 22 or 20 gauge of wire of this, or you can use an 18 gauge, something a little bit more sturdy to hold on to. Your seed beads, I'm using the Miyuki 80 seed beads. This color is the Duracoat galvanized champagne color, and the Miyuki number, if you're interested in that, is 4204. So we'll need those. Don't know the exact count of this just yet because I have not finished the bracelet, so I don't know exactly how many of those are going to be. I'll have that total down at the bottom if you want to make the same size bracelet as I have. You're going to need a beading needle. I have Pony Style brand beading needle. It's just my choice. This one is a size 11. You can use any size that you want, size 10, size 12, anything will work. You're going to need some beading thread. So I'm going to be using the Wildfire, the 0.006 in the green. You can also use Dragon Thread size 8 or Fireline size 6, whichever one that you want to use. There again, not sure of the length because I haven't finished the bracelet yet, but I'll have that listed below as well. You're then going to need some glue. I'm going to be using the E6000 today to help glue in my cord ends. And along with that, I would suggest not to use your bead on it board or anything like that. I would suggest to have a scrap piece of paper, or like I just have a stack of post-it notes that I use, and then a couple of toothpicks to help you with the gluing process. So I highly suggest those. And then as far as the tools, we will need either flat nose, chain nose, bent nose, just 2 sets of pliers just to open and close your jump rings. So you'll need something along those lines. You'll need wire cutters to get your cup chain cut off of the original length. You'll need some sort of bail making pliers. Now I'm going to be using the 6-step bail making plier, and I'm going to be using the second smallest one set, which is the 3mm. Now if you have something that's similar to these two guys, they usually come in a set of 2 like this, then you would be using this one right here, is a 3mm. So something like that. If you want to make the jump rings. If you don't want to make the jump rings, you probably won't need those. And then the last thing you'll need is a thread burner to get your thread off the spool, or some sort of sharp scissors. Either way. The only other options that you would need is some sort of bead on it board or a beading platform, then some sort of a measuring tape if you want to measure out rather than count. So the first things you'll need out are going to be your cup chain, your wire cutters, your glue and the extra supplies that you need, and then also these cord ends. So gather those supplies up and then meet me back, and then I'll show you that first step. Alright, so after that nice long introduction of what items that you will need, let's get started. Okay, so I have my E6000. I'm just going to put a little dab on my extra piece of paper here. Just like that. And of course I waste some glue doing it this way, so if that bothers you, there's other ways that you can do this. But this is just the easiest way that I've come up with as far as teaching how to do it and everything. I use one of my, what are these, toothpicks, and I roll the toothpick around in the glue just to get a little bit of glue on it, on the end of the toothpick. I don't know if you can see that. There we go. Just like that. And then I pick up the cord end, and then in the center of the cord end, I will just push that toothpick down and then just kind of twirl it around a little bit. And I'm going to do that a couple of times and just make sure there's a little bit of glue in there. It doesn't have to be overly packed, but just make sure there's something in there. Then I'm going to put that little guy down. Now on the end of the cup chain, I'm going to put a little little bit of glue on the end as well, because those last 2 stones are going to be inside the cord end, and it's going to be covered with glue anyway. So I'm just putting a little extra there. And see, it's already sticking to my finger. Then pick up your cord end, and then you just slide it in there. Now you are probably going to see some glue stick out, and sometimes you have to kind of finagle it a little bit to get it in there. They do fit. It just takes a second for them to get in there. So once you get the cord end on those last 2 stones right there, twist the cord end around a little bit. This will help kind of distribute whatever glue's on the inside to be able to attach to the cord or to the cup chain a little bit better. The only thing that you need to do is that you need to make sure that your stones are facing upward in your hand, but this hole right here on the cord end also needs to be facing upward. So then just twist your cord end around until it faces about the same way. Now you can see, like, I have a little bit of glue on my thumb right here. There's a little bit of there's a little bit of glue that's kind of sticking out the edge. That's fine. I like to use E6000 because of the ability of taking those little strands off. And I'll show you what I mean in just a few minutes. I let this sit for at least 5 or 10 minutes or so, and then after that, then I will take another toothpick, and I'll see if I can show you a little bit right now, because some of it should come off. But you want this to sit for a few minutes before you do it at least. But see how this is getting just a little bit of the glue off right there? Then you can use your nail or your fingers just to pull off that little section. So you are going to get a little bit of a messiness, which is fine, but the good thing about the E6000 is that it comes off pretty easily. Just like that. And so you just use your toothpick and start kind of cleaning up your stone, cleaning up the end and everything. So that's all you do for your first step. So I would suggest to go ahead and get all 4 of these glued on. I had already done the first 3, so that way it's a little bit easier, a little bit quicker for you. But go ahead and get those first 4 cord ends glued on to your strands. And then while we are doing the beading portion of this, which will be the next step, we will be allowing these to dry off and to be able to use them in the step after that. So our next step, we're going to need our seed beads out, and then some of your thread and your needle, and meet me back and I'll show you that first step. Alright, so in this step we are just going to make a ladder stitch of our 8/0 seed beads. So we're going to start off with this, and then in the next steps we will take our cup chain that's drying at the moment, and then we'll put the ladder stitch. Let's see, this is the one that's drying, that's on the right side. So we're going to put the ladder stitch of the seed beads in between the two cup chain pieces and everything. So put these back off to the side for a second so they can continue to dry. So we're going to be doing ladder stitch, so if you're not familiar with that, then you can follow along. So pick up 2 of your seed beads, bring those down to the end of the thread with just a comfortable amount hanging out so you can hold on to the thread at the end. So you're coming out of that second seed bead. We want to go back through the first one in the same direction that the thread's already going in, just like that. And when you pull tight, you may have to kind of play with this second bead a little bit, but that second bead should sit right next to the first bead, just like that. Now we have to get back out of the second bead over here in order to add on the next one. So to do that, we're coming out of the top of the first bead, so we're going to go down the second bead, and then just kind of give it a little bit of a tug to make sure all your thread is is pretty tight, that there's not a whole lot of loose thread there. Then you're going to pick up another seed bead. We're coming out of the bottom of that second seed bead. We're now going to go through the top to the bottom, so going in the same direction as the thread right now, through that second seed bead. Then that puts your third seed bead on. Now again, we need to get out to the third seed bead in order to add another one. So go back through the bottom part of the third seed bead, and then when you pull tight, that should have your seed beads look something similar to this. Now they are kind of a little wonky here and there. Sometimes you're going to have to kind of play with it and make sure that your tension's pretty good, and make sure that they kind of sit in a correct fashion. And eventually, of course it's going to mess up a little bit right now, but eventually you will get a chain of seed beads that are all going to look like they're sitting in a ladder like that. So just go ahead and get that part done. Now as far as how much you need, this is where this will come in. Your cup chain will come in. You're going to, like I said earlier, we're going to be putting, come on, focus. See if I can focus it better. Nope. Okay, now it's focusing a little bit. So we're going to be putting our seed beads in between our 2 strands of cup chain, just like that. So kind of gauge as to where you want your seed beads to start, and then where you want them to end, and then that's how many seed beads that you'll end up having to use. Now technically it should be just about 1 seed bead in between each of your pieces of cup chain on the 1 strand. So it's going to be about, let's see, we cut out 57, so minus 2, 4, so 53. So it's going to be about, probably about, what, 52 seed beads or so, somewhere around in there. 50 to 52 seed beads, just depending on exactly where you want the seed bead chain to start. But that's what it's going to kind of look like. So continue on with your ladder stitch all the way to the other end as to how long you want that to look like, and then meet me back, and then I'll show you how to connect the seed beads to the cup chain. Alright, so now I have my ladder stitch complete. I ended up using 45 of my 8/0 seed beads, and it is just about the length there that I wanted, where the 1 seed bead starting is just about at the space in between the first two crystals that you can see, and then the last seed bead is about the same spot. So it's about 45 seed beads is what I ended up using, just in case you want to follow along. Now what we're going to end up doing is attaching this seed bead ladder stitch that we did to the two sides of our, cup chain. So it's going to be a little fumbly when you first start off with it, so just bear with me. It will get easier as you get a little bit further down with the project. Alright, so I'm holding my seed bead chain, and then I have the cup chain over here off to the left. I have it over here off to the left because my thread is coming out of the left side of the seed bead chain. What we're going to end up doing is that we're just going to wrap our thread around that space in between the two crystals of the cup chain. So I'm going from the top around to the back, and then I'm going to go back through that seed bead in the center. Well, it will be in the center here in a second. And I have a whole lot of thread on here right now because I have no idea how much I'm going to need, which that will already be down in the description, but I have no idea how much I'm using just yet, so I have a whole lot on there right now. Now, if this bothers you, I don't know if you can see that, let me get it a little bit closer, where the cup chain is kind of on its side. For the most part, when I was doing my sample portion of this, that's what ended up happening, is that my cup chain ended up on the side, and the crystals were not facing the top. You can kind of maneuver it to where the crystals will face up and down if that's what you prefer. You just have to be careful with your tension and how tight that you pull your thread when you're adding your thread around the cup chain. So it can work, it's just you have to take it very, very slowly. So go ahead and pick up your second cup chain, and then we're going to wrap this thread, which is coming out of the right, around the right cup chain. In between those two beads, I'm going back behind it, and I'm coming out through the seed bead again. And here again, I have a whole lot of thread. And then just take it ever so slowly if you have to. And then just make sure the cup chain is facing in the way that you want it to face. So now we're coming out of that middle seed bead. Now we have to get down to the next seed bead, and I would always suggest to start through the seed beads, because this way you'll hide some of the thread itself. So go ahead, and we're coming out of just that middle seed bead right now. I'm going to go down to the next seed bead in line, and then this is where just go through just the seed bead at first until you know exactly where you're going to be coming out to wrap around the next cup chain. So now we're coming out of the right side, so we're going to go through the right cup chain around it next. Right now it's lining up in between the second and the third crystal, so I'm going to go ahead. I have to kind of pull it apart a little bit, make sure that there's a little bit of a space there. Sometimes the cup chain doesn't give you a whole lot of space. You just kind of have to pull it apart a little bit and just be careful with it. And just do the same thing. Wrap from the front of the cup chain around to the back, and then come out just the seed bead. I'm going to hold it here. It's a little bit easier for my thread to go in between everything. And then just when it gets close to the product, that's when I pull tight, or pull tighter. So now we're going to go through in between the second and third crystal over here. So I'm going to flip it in my hands a little bit, easier for me to do it. So now I'm going from the top, or from the front to the back. Just make sure you go around the cup chain. You can always flip it like this if you have to, and then go in the back side. But just go around the cup chain and then go through your next seed bead, or that same seed bead that we're coming out of. I keep missing the seed bead. Really? Okay, there we go. And I'm holding on to it again so that way it'll be easier for it to guide into the spot that I want it at. And just like that. So don't forget to step down to the next seed bead. So we're going into the third one, and this is all you're doing all the way down to the other side. Now eventually some of these seed beads you're going to come across, like after this third one, we're going to go through this this line of the cup chain, but then this is going to be the next one in line, but your seed bead's down here. So eventually you're going to have to kind of choose, okay, do I want to go through this line right here, or do I want to go through this one with this seed bead? So it's just one of those things, just gauge it, see what works the best for you, and then just work your way all the way down to the other end of the bracelet. So go ahead and continue that step, and then I will meet you back and I will show you how to make your own jump rings if you don't have any already on hand. Alright, so I'm back for a quick second because I wanted to show you something that was happening with me, so it's probably going to happen with you as well. As you can see right here, my thread is kind of loose because I want to show what was about to happen. If I started to pull tight on it, see how it was kind of catching on to that the bottom row of the cup chain, and it's catching onto the prongs that are keeping the chatons inside of the cup chain. So just be careful with that because it happened down here, further down here, and I had to kind of loosen up everything and try to get it fixed. So just take your time with it. Look at your product every time you move from one bead or around the cup chain and everything, and make sure everything is sitting the way that you want. This has taken me probably a good, I think I've been beading for about 30 minutes or so, and I've only done, about half the bracelet. So this part is a little lengthy because you do have to take your time with it and everything. So, but I wanted to come back and show you that that was a possibility. Just keep your eye out on that and continue on, and I'll meet you back in another minute. Alright, so now we're down to the end of the bracelet again. So here is the starter thread coming out of our first bead. So I'm coming out of currently the left-hand side of the second to last seed bead. So I'm going to go do my little ladder stitch again, go through the first seed bead. I'm going to show you how I'm going to tie this off. So I'm going to finish that last stitch. So we're going to go through that seed bead. Then we're going to wrap around that last spot of the cup chain on the right. And then we'll wrap around, once I get this tight. There we go. And then we'll wrap around the other cup chain that is on the left, or in the way that I'm holding it right now on the top. And then just make sure that starter thread does not get mixed up in the loop at all. And then that gets that last bead connected to the rest of the bracelet, just like that. So now I'm going to go back through that bead that the second bead from the end, and I'm going to ladder stitch back into that first bead one more time, but in doing so, actually I'm not going to ladder stitch just yet. I'm going to move my thread needle to the back. So I'm just going in between the two beads. I'm just moving my needle and thread to the back. So it's still coming out of that second bead there. And I'm just making sure everything is still in the way that I want it to be, because once we tie off, then it's going to tighten everything up again. So now my thread needle are at the back, and it's sitting right next to where my starter thread is at. Make sure that's focused. I think it is. And then this is how I tie my knots. I take my shorter thread, which is in my right hand right now, my longer thread. I put the shorter thread over the longer thread, and then which makes a loop, and then get that shorter thread to go through the loop facing me once. pull it down. Then I make another loop with the shorter thread going over the longer thread, but this time the shorter thread is going to go through the loop going away from me. And then pull that down. And then now your loop or your knot is complete. All you have to do now is just burn off your threads, which leaves a little bit of a thread right there. You want to leave about 1/8 of an inch or so, something like that. Then you just take your thread burner and you burn those tips down closer to the product that you're working on. And then now you have the beaded portion complete of your bracelet. So meet me back in a second and I will show you how to do the jump rings. So get out your mandrel if you have that, and your wire, and your flush cutters, and I'll meet you back. Alright, so I have everything out that is needed to make the jump rings. And again, if you already have 3mm jump rings on hand that you want to use, then go ahead and use that. You can always skip this portion. So I am going to make the jump rings by using my 6-step bail making pliers, and I'm going to be using the second one, which is a 3mm. So the inner diameter of these jump rings are going to be 3mm. You can either use your flush cut, or if you happen to have the double flush cut pliers, you can use those as well. But I'll show it with the flush cut ones because I think most people probably have these on hand. So you'll want to get just a piece of wire. I've just got just a little bit off the spool at the moment. I'm just leaving it on the spool. You don't have to, you can always cut off a piece. It really doesn't matter. You'll want to make about 20 jump rings, just depending on what you want as far as the length of your extender chain. Oh, and I forgot to say, you need to get this out too. This is your extra scrap piece of wire. I'll show you how to use that in a minute. But as far as how many that you want to make, I'm suggesting about 20. I'm going to have a 1.5 inch long extender chain on my bracelet, and then we'll need at least 3 on either side of the bracelet itself, so that way we can attach the clasp on one side and then the extender chain on the other side. So we'll need about 20. If you're wanting to do a different size of the extender chain, 8 of these is about 1 inch. So I've already got 8 of them on here, so I can measure it to figure out how much 1 inch was. So 8 was 1 inch, so I'm going to do 1.5 inches, and then I'll need 6 on both sides of my bracelet. So I'll need a total of 18, but I would suggest to do a few extras just in case something goes wrong. Alrighty, to start off with, we're going to put the end of our wire into the bail to where you can't really feel it on the other side with your finger. There we go, in between the pliers, just like that. And then, whoops, and don't let go. And then all you do is you just start wrapping this around the pliers, however many times that you need to wrap around. And I think I'm going the wrong direction. Oh, great. Okay, let's start that over again. Okay, so cancel that. Alright, starting again. So putting the wire into the pliers. When you're wrapping, you want to make sure that you're wrapping to where the top part, or the beginning of your wire, sits on top of the one that you're wrapping, just like that. So that way you're creating more wraps down here on the bottom than you are at the top. So that way your older wraps will fall off of your bail. The other way, when it was starting just then, it was going to be to where the older wraps were going to be down, or the newer wraps were going to be down here, and it just wasn't going to work. Or up here, and it wasn't going to work. Alright, so that's just one wrap. And like I said, you're going to want to do at least 20. So that's 2, 3. I'm only going to make a few. I'm not going to go all the way to 20 because it's the same process. That's 4. And then 5. I'll do one more. And 6. And then once you have as many wraps on there as you want, then take it off the pliers and make sure that your flush cutters are facing in the correct direction to try to make a flush cut as close to the coil as you can. So go ahead and cut off your coil from your spool. Now this is where your little extra piece of scrap wire that I suggest to be at least a 20 gauge, maybe even an 18 gauge would work just as well. But on one end, just take your chain nose pliers, and as soon as I find mine again, on one end just take your chain nose pliers and then just wrap around it, so that way you have basically a little right angle right there in your wire. What you'll do is you'll drop the longer end through your coil, and what you want to do is you want to get this right angle bend up under, trying to get it close enough so you can see it, up under that first coil. And sometimes it's hard for me to do because I get my nails done, so they're a little bit thicker than typical. So you want them up under that coil, and then once it starts, it's so much easier. There we go. And then all you're doing is just rotating your coil through that little right angle weave. You can do it like that. You can hold it like this. This was another option. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can hold it to where you can run this little handle through your coil. And what it's doing is that it's separating your coil out, so when we go to cut the jump rings off this coil, it makes it so much easier. Alright, so here is where you want to decide if you need to cut off any more of your coil in order for it to look right. So, I don't know, can you see that or not? You can kind of see that. See how this bottom coil, it's not turning right here at the very end. There's a little bit that's kind of sticking out. So I'm going to cut off just a little small part of that first coil. Right there at the end. That's how much I cut off. Just a very, very tiny amount. And then that's where I'm going to start cutting my coils. Now I'm going to flip to this side, so that way I have two flush ends up against each other, or at least as close as possible. So you just want to insert your wire, or your cutters, up against the wire to where the wire is like up against the cutters a little bit. This is really hard to do sometimes, and try to teach it at the same time. But just insert it in there. Just make sure you're cutting one coil at a time. And then when you cut, you should have something that looks resembling a jump ring. And sometimes you're going to have to try to take it one thing at a time. See, I actually cut into that wire up there. I don't know if you can see that or not either, but that second wire, that second loop up here, that one's actually already cut into a little bit. Eeps. But that's okay. So we're going to cut off this little portion to make it flush, and we're going to flip it this direction, and then this jump ring I'll probably throw away, only because it is already cut a little bit, because I cut into it by accident. So we're going to put that one off to the side. Then we're going to make this one flush again, so just a little tip. And then turn it to where it's flush on the other side. This is where the double flush cutters actually come in handy. And then cut that off. And then I'll show it with the double flush cutters, just in case you do have some of them. So that one is not a flush cut yet, because I cut a little bit off of it off with the previous cut. So now it's flush. Now with the double flush cutters, all you have to do is just insert your pliers in there up against that other edge and just cut one jump ring at a time, and now you have double flush. So these are a lot more easier to cut with, but it depends on if you have them available or not. Let's see which one, this one. And see, this last jump ring sometimes is really hard to figure out how to get that cut off. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my double flush ones again, just because it's a little bit easier. And I'm going to cut it like that. And then put the little tip off to the side. And then there's my jump rings. So go ahead and finish up your jump rings. You'll need, like I said, around 20, just depending on which, how long you want your extender chain to go. And then meet me back after that. I'll show you how to make the little charm, and then we'll put the bracelet together after that. See you back in a minute. Okay, so we're back to make our little charm. So I've already made one just to make sure that it looks about the way that I want it to come out, just like that. So we're going to make this little heart head pin, and then we're going to add a couple of beads and then round it out at the top. Alright, to do that, I've cut off about 4 inches. Probably don't need that much, but that's what I have cut off. So I got about 4 inches of wire, and I've already warmed it up in my fingers a little bit. What we want to do at the end is make a loop. So I'm actually going to use the smallest of my 6-step bail making pliers, and I'm just going to make one little loop. So I'm going to put the wire in there just like we've been doing, and then loop it around until it touches the wire on the other side, just like that. Then I'm going to take my chain nose pliers, and I'd say probably about right in there or so. Oh, you can't even see it. There we go. Right about there or so. I want to bend the wire because it's coming out towards the camera right now, so I want to bend it. Okay, it's not working for me. It's not staying. So right about there. There we go. Like that. And then I'm going to bend it around the pliers until the wire is up close to where the loop is at again. Just like that. Well, it was in focus and now it's getting out of focus. There we go. Just like that. So now we need to make the other loop of the heart on the other side. So I've got the bail making pliers once again. I'm going to put them to where the round nose, or the round part that I'm going to be using, is on the interior part of the heart, and just pick out where you want it to sit. Then you're going to wrap your wire around that smallest loop and make it come all the way down to the tip of the heart, just like that. And then we're going to go back to our chain nose pliers. I'm going to grip the wire at the base of the heart, and then I'm going to fold the heart upwards, get it started, and then I'm going to do the rest of it with my fingers because you want your wire to go all the way from the bottom of the heart down here at the tip all the way towards the top. And then now you have your head pin made. And all I did just then is I just smushed it in my hands a little bit. You can get some nylon jaw pliers if you want to, and then just kind of smush it down a little bit just to kind of harden it. Also, it helps keep it from getting any scratches or anything like that on it. So that's your head pin made. So now I'm just going to put a seed bead. You don't have to use seed beads, but I decided to go ahead and put a seed bead in between the hearts. Your heart bead, and another seed bead. Just like that. Now we're going to make a loop at the top up here. So I'm grabbing my wire, and I have the tip of my pliers about the same length on the other side as the seed bead. so it's hanging out enough just about over the seed bead. And that is going to help me with having a little bit of room so I can do a little bit of a wrap. So with that being the case, then you move the wire over the pliers just like that towards the back. And then this is going to be easier if you have the round nose pliers. So I'm going to put the round nose pliers in there at about the same spot that I had the chain nose. So the round nose are sitting about the same, just about the same width as the seed bead that's sitting there. And then, actually I just moved them a little bit, but that's okay. Then I'm going to go up over the top jaw of the round nose. Now I'm going to loosen it up some, and I'm going to change it to where that top jaw is now the bottom jaw. And then I'm going to continue the loop all the way to the back. And then just kind of straighten it up a little bit because I kind of made it a little bit wobbly there. And then now you have a loop. Now I'm going to hold on to that loop with my chain nose again, and then I'm going to take that extra wire and wrap around the post there in between the loop and the seed bead. I'm only going to do it a couple of times because there's not that much room there. Moving my beads around just to make sure that they still have a little bit of room to move and to twirl around. And then when I'm happy with where it's at, I'm going to flush cut it up against the product. Make sure that I'm happy with the placement of the loop, which with it being a charm it really kind of doesn't matter, but I'm going to make it to where it is perpendicular, the loop is facing the heart itself. And then I'm going to tuck in this little edge of the end of our coil before I forget to do that, so that way it doesn't poke anybody. So then there's our little charm. Alright, so you got your charm made, we got our bracelet made, we got our jump rings made. So go ahead and get all of those out, as well as your lobster clasp or whatever clasp you're going to use, and then we'll put this thing together. Alright, so let's put this bracelet together. So if you haven't already, you'll want to take your jump rings that you made, and this is only if you've made your jump rings, but you'll want to harden them, to work harden them. In order to do that, I take my flat nose pliers. You can use your chain nose too, or you can use your nylon jaw pliers, and then just smush them. Just make sure you're hardening them just a little bit. Doesn't have to be like a whole lot, but just smush them. That way you know that they're work hardened. I've already done all of mine, so, but if you haven't done that yet, go ahead and do that. Like I said, I have 12 of my jump rings, so I have an 1.5 inch extension. Then we have our charm, our clasp, and then the extra jump rings that we're going to add to the ends of the bracelet. So go ahead and add a jump ring to each side, to each of the cord ends that we used at the end of the bracelet that we glued on at the very beginning. So go ahead and add those. I'll just do this one side, and then you can do the other side here in a minute because it's going to be basically the same thing. And then I just need one. We're going to use one jump ring, and we're going to connect the two jump rings that we just put on. So go through one jump ring and connect the two that we just put on, so that way it brings it together. Now on this jump ring, this is where you can add your lobster clasp if you like. I'm going to go ahead and do that on this side. So I'm going to go through the lobster, and then I'll close it off. Whoops. There we go. Then the other side, go ahead and do that. If you need to, you can fast forward through this little section because it's the same thing that I did on the other side. And then we'll just add the extender onto this side. Okay, sorry, I was a little off screen there. I was making sure my jump ring was closed all the way. Put the second jump ring on. And then put the jump ring on to connect the two together. And once you get that on, this jump ring's not open enough. There we go. Got those two connected. Now I can add my extender chain on this side. And then close that up. And then before we get too far, go to the very last loop down here at the bottom, open that up, and add your charm on. Whoops. And then now you have a completed bracelet. Alrighty, so here's our completed bracelet. And look how sparkly it is. And then here is everything on the back. So I want to say thank you for watching. I appreciate everybody watching and liking the video if you like it. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And hit that notification bell, and then you'll get notified when I come out with new videos. So thanks again for watching, everybody. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.